Today I'm going to be talking about EFT, but I'm also going to be talking about other things related to our subconscious and neurolinguistic programming, which I'll get into the definition of. At the crux of this speaks to mindset and a lot of what we learned from Jacqueline in the previous couple of workshops where we're talking about kind of setting our mindset for the coming year or for 2025. We're here. And today I'm going to be kind of going over how to move from feeling stuck to being unstuck, release these limiting beliefs or stories that we tell ourselves that hold us back. So to start, I'll just introduce myself for those who may not know me. And actually, I think I can go to presentation mode. That might be okay. Is that better?
Yeah, never, never.
Okay, perfect. So my background is in medicine, and I'm an obesity medicine physician as well as a advanced certified neurolinguistic programming coach. What does that mean? Neurolinguistic programming is basically understanding how our brain works or the language of the mind and how that drives behavior. And so for me, this is the perfect combination of sciences because as a physician, my job is to help my client, help my patient to move from the goal setting to the achieving the goal mode. So it's between education and execution. And this is the bridge that helps you to get there. And so today I'm going to be talking about how our mind works and how we can use that to our advantage in order to be able to achieve our goals for 2025 and to release some of the limiting beliefs that may be holding us back. We're going to be uncovering our limiting beliefs today, and then we're going to do an exercise to help to release, and that should say reset. Okay, so I would love to know with either like an emoji or a show of hands for whoever has the video on is like how many people know or understand or have heard of the subconscious mind or know like what it is.
Yeah, and probably not as scientifically or detailed, but definitely have an understanding of unconscious, subconscious, the things that are happening that we're not aware of.
Perfect. Okay, good. You have a leg up on me from like a year ago before I became certified. I was just like, I don't know, it sounds like something that somebody made up, which sounds really silly from coming from a doctor, but we don't work in the subconscious realm. We work in the conscious realm, but the subconscious realm is really where a lot of the power is, the driving force for making decisions and for kind of doing the work that I'm going to get into today. So if we were to think about the mind as broken up into two chunks, with the subconscious mind being what we would discover beneath the surface and the conscious mind being above. The conscious mind is what we're currently aware of. So if I were to ask you a math problem, or if you wanted to make a decision about lunch, you would be using your conscious mind to do that processing. The subconscious or the unconscious mind is what happens here below the surface. And this drives over 90% of our actions, our automatic behaviors. It's where our memories are stored, our beliefs, etc. And so understanding this portion of our mind can be really powerful because, as I said, it drives 95% of our day-to-day. So I'm going to introduce a few concepts first, and then we'll kind of get into limiting beliefs, and it'll tie together hopefully at the end for us. So this is a model of change, and this is what NLP uses in order to help people to be motivated towards change and to really achieve change in their lives. And so we start here at the bottom, and we have our environment, our behavior, our potential, our beliefs, our values, our identity, our purpose, and goal. And we know that if we initiate a change at any one of these rungs, we can have some kind of change that's noticeable in our lives. And I'll give you a specific example in a minute. And the idea here is the higher up the rung or higher up the ladder we go, the more impactful that change will have in our lives and in our behaviors and etc. So if we take the example of somebody who wants to quit smoking, and we change just their environment. So let's say they no longer, let's say there's a smoking area at work and they just decide they're not going to go to that smoking area. It's going to change the outcome, but not that, effectively. They may still smoke in other areas, or they may still engage in the behavior in a different way. If instead that person decides, well, instead of smoking, I'm going to start chewing gum, that would help them quite considerably because they would be chewing gum instead of smoking, and then they wouldn't hang out in the smoking areas at work. However, the driving force, let's say they smoke when they're anxious, for example, those driving forces are still there and they may slip up and still succumb, just go back to smoking here and there. If, however, this person were to get therapy, address their anxiety, learn to manage their stress better, so they're working on their skills and capabilities, that's going to now have a bigger impact on their behavior and their environment. If we take it a couple of steps forward, where we're like, okay, this person now believes that smoking, let's say it's against their religion, or it's against some higher purpose or some other value that they tie smoking to, that in turn will have a deeper impact. If they morally believe that smoking is bad, then that could have a deeper impact on, again, their beliefs, their potentials, their behavior, and environment. And then just to take it even deeper and go one step forward, and this is where I think it's really important, and this is the level that I tend to work with my clients on, is the level of identity. And so if this person now, we can get them to believe that they are a non-smoker, that they are not somebody who smokes, then they're going to have all of these other rungs kind of fall into place. Their values will align with somebody who's not a smoker, their beliefs, their potentials, their behavior, their environment. And so that would have really one of the biggest impacts on their behavior, and that's going to be even longer lasting than just making changes at these lower levels. And so I say all of this to say that the higher we can address the change, meaning the higher we go, the more impactful that change you're trying, or goal you're trying to achieve, will, the longer lasting it'll be. Any questions on that, or is that clear? I hope. Okay, good. So another concept I want to introduce, and I want to also point out here that beliefs is kind of midway. So it's not at the top where identity lies, but it can have quite an impact on these other levels here. And now I want to just explain to you a little bit about how our mind processes our environment and how that affects the results. And to tie it to what we're talking about today, and as business owners, we know that we can, in order to achieve the results that we want for 2025, if we know how to adjust these filters that drive the results or drive the behaviors and then the results, that's where that can be really key for a lot of us. And so to explain this model of reality through, again, neurolinguistic programming, we take in cues from our environment through our five senses. So whatever we see, hear, smell, touch, taste. Our brain in turn will generalize, delete, or distort that information in order to simplify it, for us to be able to then put our own little filters on it. So to give you an example, if we were to step outside and it's a fall day and we see, an orange leaf, a yellow leaf there are dead leaves on the ground, there's a chill in the air. Our brain, if it were to notice all the little minutia that's happening in our environment, would just go into overload. So we generalize and our brain's like, oh, it's a pretty fall day, right? So it just kind of takes all that information and process it into bits of information that we can actually process, and we come out with this conclusion, so to speak. So examples of deletion is when we would ignore things that are happening in our environment and we would just believe one thing that's happening. And then distortion would be if we were to take information that's given to us and we would change it to fit what we believe. So to give you an example of distortion would be if somebody were to, let's say you go to work and you're wearing a shirt that you don't feel comfortable in, and somebody says to you, nice shirt. Because you don't feel comfortable in it, you may take that to be a sarcastic comment. And so we're distorting what may have been not the intention, unintentionally what the complimenter was saying, which was trying to give us a compliment. And so those different ways that we process information is colored by these internal filters that we have in our minds, and they are our beliefs, our values, our identity, our language, and beyond. And so if we think about that, again, in this example that I just gave you, the belief was this shirt doesn't look good on me, or this shirt doesn't fit me well. And so we use that filter to process and distort the original meaning of what we heard. That in turn colors our internal experience. So maybe we start to feel a little bit sad or anxious or shame, and that can affect our state, how we are, how we're going through our day and our physiology throughout that day. So maybe that day you don't talk to anybody because you don't feel good, because you felt shame as a result of that comment, and then that's going to impact kind of the result, whatever you're working on that day. If you're at work, it's going to impact your work. If you're at home with your family, it's going to impact, the relationships that you have with your family members. And so it's really important. This happens regardless right here. Oops. The processing, generalizing, deleting, and distorting. And so we have no impact here. However, we do have an impact on the filters that we use in order to process that information. So if we can decide what our identity is going to be, what our beliefs are going to be, our values, etc., if we can make changes here, that's going to drive changes here inevitably in our results. And so that's what I want to address today, is affecting change at the level of beliefs and how that can lead to different results. Any questions? Okay.
No, this is good. It's interesting to like see it broken out this way.
Yeah, and I think some of us on a like a intuitive level, we're like, duh, it kind of makes sense that our beliefs would color our decisions, but really seeing it laid out this way, and even personally seeing this out laid out this way for the first time, it was such an aha moment, and things started to click. And so I hope that that's happening, and that this can really help you to see why it's important to focus on mindset. Oftentimes, it's kind of put out there as this manifestation or law of attraction, and it's deemed as kind of like the spiritual thing, and not to say that there isn't. However, really at the crux of it is the science of truly changing results by believing something different, because that affects how you behave. So it's actually not magic. So sorry to take away any mystery from the law of attraction, but it's really, this is what's driving that. Okay, so let's talk about what are limiting beliefs. So limiting beliefs are thoughts or assumptions that hold us back from achieving our full potential. They often feel, as the name would imply, as a belief, it feels like a truth that's rooted in often past experiences, fears, or societal conditioning. And so I know we're a small group, but I do definitely want to make it interactive. So if anyone can wants to chime in or type, what are some limiting beliefs that they may have had, whether it's about their business or something else, in other aspect of their lives? I'd love to hear it. And I'll start by sharing mine, and if anyone wants to open up. And so for me personally, when I started my practice, I had been a physician for over a decade. And so in my head, that was my identity. And so I had the beliefs and values that were associated with that. And then opening a business felt like a completely different identity. Like, oh, I'm a business owner now, but I don't have the skills to be a business owner. I'm not smart enough to be a business owner. I need to go get an MBA to be a business owner. And so these, for me, were limiting beliefs that held me back for literally years, actually, from starting my own practice, because it was a desire I had for such a long time. And then once I released these beliefs and shifted my mindset, that's what allowed me to really take the steps to opening my business up. And so I would love to hear if this is resonating, or any beliefs that you might have had that you want to share, or currently have, not even might have had in the past, maybe currently still have.
Thanks, Joanne. I mean, we were talking before about the hotel that I was part of building in Colombia, and so we had a point at which things felt like they were going well, right? I remember it started with no experience as an entrepreneur, and you know, I didn't, oddly enough, I didn't have limiting beliefs at that stage, really. I had this belief that I could do it because I'd always kind of succeeded at the jobs that I'd had, and I just kind of felt like it was new, and even though I was not really prepared for it. But what happened is I didn't succeed initially, and we got to a point where we had a whole team that I was the CEO of our little company, and so kind of the one who we were, the three of us, the three founders, we worked together on everything. We made decisions together, but it was still me as the kind of one with that title of being in charge. And a few months before we thought we were going to be able to open, which in retrospect we were all really ridiculously naive to think that we would have been able to open given where things were, but we had a team
Mhm.
of supposed experts that kept telling us we were on track to
Mhm.
open at the end of that year, which was 2017, 2018, I guess. And not only did one day they finally came clean that we weren't on track for that, but we were also incredibly over budget. At that point, after it looked like $800,000 over budget, turned out it was like $2 million over budget. And so the whole project ground to a halt. We literally like we were in the middle of construction. We'd already invested, $2 million in the project. And we had a point where we had to stop construction. We had literally like $200 in our bank account. And luckily some of investors were able like eventually came through, but like it was a time, I mean, I've dealt with depression my whole life. And so but it added like this level of anxiety because then it was like no matter what we did, I couldn't get the numbers to square. Like,
Mhm.
like making projections is always a bit of a like a bit of inventing, and it was just I couldn't get anything to make sense. And like every time I tried to figure out our numbers so I could go say to our shareholders and to the next presentation like what it would be. Anyway, so long story short is eventually we got the money, we started construction back up, we opened the hotel, COVID hit, and that was a whole other thing. But what should have been this like massive like success, like we three guys who had no idea what we were doing, raised over $4 million, opened this beautiful hotel an hour and a half outside of Medellin, Colombia, but it felt like a defeat. Like I couldn't stop it from feeling like a defeat because I had been kind of the one responsible for that failure of leadership
Oh.
and of like of oversight. And it's taken years, and I still like I'm still dealing with the repercussions. I don't know how to turn. There's limiting beliefs that are happening in there because of that. I don't know exactly what the limiting beliefs are, but I know that I'm still being held back
Mhm.
by that experience because I haven't had the like to counteract something like that, you need to have like something equally good happen. And I haven't yet. I've helped businesses get to six figures, but not yet to seven figures and not yet quite where I need to be,
Mhm.
in those businesses and financially. And so there are still things that are holding me back from that. But I know I just have for so long I feel like I'm not a good leader. I can't
Yeah.
do it. I suck at this. I'm a failure because look at how badly I did when I had the chance to do it. So that would be a big one for that I'm,
Yeah.
still trying to figure out how to define and move beyond.
Wow, Nathan, thank you so much for sharing. First of all, that's a really big one, and that's oftentimes that's, and to me, hearing this from you, I mean, I think you're a phenomenal leader. And I think you do such a great job to hear this. And obviously, I understand me saying this will not maybe release that, but I'm saying it anyway. And so I think that for sure, a lot of people that reach great levels of success still struggle with limiting beliefs at the end of the day, because if you have a goal, this is how I look at it. If you have a goal that you are not yet achieving, it's because there is still something that you don't believe is true about yourself, that is allowing, that you're not giving yourself permission to move forward. And so that's why this work is really important, because as we saw in that, that model of reality, is how is this impacting your behavior today? Because I'm sure you probably, if you did a little bit of reflection, that idea of not being a great leader or a successful leader is affecting how you show up in certain areas. You're showing up this amazingly. Imagine how much more amazingly you could show up if you could release that. And for so many people, that's somebody's trying to get in. I'll just go ahead
Yep.
and admit them. Okay. That's why this is so important. This work is so important, because we need people like you and everyone who has a business idea has that idea because they see a world that is different with what they're bringing. And so being able to release this can be so powerful in how, again, how you show up, right? What are the behaviors you would now instead take, and then imagine the results you would be able to achieve. I hope that's resonating, or that feels.
No, yeah, it does. It's funny because like you just popped up there those things. It's like I think a lot of people have a fear of failure, when they go into things that keeps them back. That's a limiting belief. And I don't know that I don't worry so much about failure because I've done enough things through my life to not worry about that so much, but it's more of a fear, I think, of success, right? There's this like fear of like what would success mean? Like, it would I would have to change my thinking about myself as a person not worthy of success if I were to have success, you know.
Exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my gosh, Nathan, you are hitting the nail on the head. And that's for a lot of people, right? So I ask whenever I'm in my coaching, whenever somebody is having a hard time of letting go of a belief about themselves, it's often because, and this is for everybody, for every belief, the reason that we hold them, so our subconscious wants to protect us. It's never, on a deeper level, sabotaging. At surface, it can look like sabotaging behavior, but at its core, it's trying to protect us. And it's protecting us from a perceived harm. And so, for example, in the example you just gave, where it's like, what would it look like if you succeeded? Your subconscious may be like, well, I'm not ready for that. I don't feel like I can be a leader. I can't be somebody who people look up to. I can't do whatever it is. And it's, not to get too deep into it, because I definitely, could do a whole coaching session for you right here about it. But I'll give you an example of a client of mine who, whenever he would weight loss, whenever he would start to lose weight and somebody made a comment, he would start backsliding. And he didn't realize that until later, thought about it and realized that he was self-sabotaging, because what if he succeeded? What if he got to his goal weight and he tied his identity to his current 300-pound self? And so subconsciously, his subconscious mind was like, well, if you get to under 200 pounds, you're not going to be, a Tom or whatever, right? And so when you tie your identity to something that is changing, you want to stay in a safe space. And so that's why it's really important to do this reflection and get your subconscious to feel comfortable with the idea of that success. Because repetition and constant exposure, this is why visualization is so powerful, is that we think in pictures. If I said, I'm going to eat a hamburger, like I'm already imagining a hamburger, right? I didn't see the word hamburger, I saw a picture. And so visualization helps our subconscious. We're talking the same language, we're speaking the same language, which is pictures, and we're seeing ourselves in that successful situation. And the more we do it, the less anxiety we have around our potential success, because we've experienced it in our minds first. And so I could talk on forever, but I'll leave that there. Do you have any questions?
No, I mean, if anybody else wanted to share before you go on, obviously I don't want to monopolize the conversation.
Absolutely,
I would
yeah.
say that, can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I would say like my limiting belief is a little similar to Nathan's, in that not really believing that my business can be like a six-figure business, that I can like really do this, that I can really like, make that money and just really be where I want to be. Because I've taken courses and coaching and all this, I've read the books and all the things that say, that you can do it and it's possible, you have to believe in yourself, so on and so forth. And I really want to do it and I'm really pushing to do it. But I think there's still that limiting belief that, you know, I don't know if I really can do it. Am I capable of doing it? And it's also a little bit of fear of failure, but also probably, like Nathan said, a fear of success, because with a certain amount of success becomes a lot of responsibility. And it's scary to have responsibility. It's like, if I have all this responsibility, can I handle that
Mhm.
responsibility? And so sometimes
Absolutely.
I feel like for me, I let myself off the hook on some things. It's like,
Mhm.
I don't know if I can do that, or, oh, that's too hard, or that's whatever. So it's like easy to let yourself off the hook. So I think that would be mine.
Yeah, I love that. And that's, similarly, so that is leading to more limiting beliefs, right? So like that limiting belief at first, like success, and then the belief that with success means more responsibility. That is another limiting belief, right? And so the more you dig into like, okay, why do you believe that to be true? Are there examples where that's not necessarily the case? all of those kind of like reflections on that can be really eye-opening. And something that I really love doing and started doing recently that helped me, because I used to think similarly about how, oh, if I do well, exactly, then I'm going to have to spend more time, or no, it was I have to, in order to have a successful business, I have to work, so many hours in order to see success. And so I equated success with working long hours and hard work. And so when I kind of dug deeper and realized all of these limiting beliefs and let go of them, that kind of led me to now, what are my values and what are the things that I actually truly want, and what are the definitions of success? Because one of the tricks our subconscious will play is to keep things vague. And sometimes we already have success and just haven't realized it because we haven't defined it. And so, personal example, I have always talked about wanting to have freedom and flexibility in my schedule. And when I did this exercise, I realized I already have it. I can literally sign up for shifts at the hospital whenever I want. I work on my business when I want. I didn't sleep well last night, so I took a nap right before this. You know what I mean? So when I sat down and thought about like, what does that mean to me? What does flexibility look like? And it's going to look different for different people. You may have already succeeded, or you're halfway there and you have evidence for success. And sometimes it's also just like defining that word for ourselves in order to really see how far, to measure it properly. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that does help. I love that you said defining what success means to you, and I don't think I've done that. And that's very helpful, because for me, success is like having that time freedom. Like I can create my schedule how I want to. I can take naps when I want to, and I can do the things that I want to. Like for instance, this morning I was able to go to breakfast with a friend like on the fly, because I don't work a 9 to 5. I have my own schedule. So that really helps a lot. So yeah, thank you.
Good, you're welcome. And I saw
And
Kimberly, you had your hand up for a while. Oh, sorry.
no, I was just saying, I was just want to make sure we saw that Kimberly had raised her hand.
Hi.
Hi.
This is my first Read event and I had to come late, but I appreciate everything that's been shared in like the 8 minutes I've been on. It's all very relatable. And for me, what's so tricky is I believe I'm being successful. I can be successful. I'm looking for the miracle. So that's what frustrates me, because I'll launch something and I expect it to sell out tomorrow and it doesn't. And so it's just like, that's my frustration. It's like, I have this belief. I feel like the things that I'm doing, that I'm called to do it. I feel really thoughtful about the things I put out in the world. And when I put it out in the world, crickets, right? And I got coaching. I will share with different people. Everyone's like, yes, this is amazing. This is so good. And crickets, right? And so it's
Yeah.
just so interesting. And then it was reaffirming the rest of the stuff you said, because part of my business, all my language is about redefining success for yourselves. My framework is, the underlying thing is tell the truth, because we operate in so much storytelling. So even this is affirming that I'm on the right track, but I'm still just waiting for this moment where it starts really clicking in reality. And the last thing I'll say is like, one of the, I'm a career coach, so I do career coaching, corporate consulting, and retreats. But I've really been leaning, and I've been in business less than a year. I launched this year in April of 2024, because we're in the new year.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And I've been leaning towards resting, and I was kind of like, maybe I'm doing too much into the rest, because I think it's just so important how we treat ourselves and what our state is. And then this woman on LinkedIn just released this Black Women's Rest Revolution. She had 1,000 people sign up. And I'm like, look, I get 10 people to sign up for my free sacred rest sessions and only one shows up. And so I'm like, okay, so I'm in the right vein. I'm just waiting for the click. That's where I'm at. I'm just waiting for the click. And there's something to being part of community, to just keep yourself in the race while you're waiting for the click. So that's where I'm at in my business. Just like, I'm waiting on the click.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. I can totally relate when you say like you put something out there and you're just waiting for people to come. And I want to challenge you a little bit, Kimberly, and ask, when you look at your behavior and how you're showing up in your business, when you think about a limiting belief, really that stems from like, what are the actions you're not taking that you feel like would really help? And everyone kind of knows on some level, like, oh, I really, should be showing up on Instagram lives more. I really should be posting more. But really, when you look at your business with all the training and expertise you have, are there places where maybe you could show up a little bit differently, or that would be more, what do you call it, more effective? And if you're not, that's where your limiting belief is, right? So it's where are you not behaving in alignment, and what are the stories you're telling yourself that's not allowing you to do that? And you don't have to answer this right now, but that's, that's the idea behind a lot of these limiting beliefs. I know personally, when I launched my course, so another storytelling is telling, one of the things I used to get really frustrated, I had one sale and then that was it, crickets, just like you said. And then I wanted to make it, and I knew my course was awesome. And so for me, my limiting belief was related to me showing up and talking about it. And I wasn't talking about my course. I just put up a website and expect people to find it. I wasn't posting regularly. I wasn't selling my stories. I wasn't doing the things that I saw other people who were able to sell do. And so I had to go back and realize my limiting belief was I felt like if I talked so much about the things that I have to offer, I'm too much of a salesperson, and I don't want to feel like I'm forcing something down someone's throat. So that was my limiting belief. And so I had to let go of that. And the way that I was able to do that is really by, again, I think I have an awesome product. And if you have a really good, whatever, lipstick, or you love your, whatever it is, you would tell everybody and anybody who would listen. Somebody compliments you, oh my God, you have to get this. This is the best thing ever. So similarly, once I kind of shifted my mindset about my course, I'm like, no, actually my course is pretty awesome and it's going to help so many people. I have no problems talking about it. I don't feel like I'm pushing anything. I'm actually just pushing something that I think a lot of people would benefit from, that I can't keep quiet about. Awesome. Thank you, Tanya. Okay. I
do want to add one, I want to add one thing for Kimberly's and everybody's thoughts is in trying to put it in the framework of a limiting belief. I think that what I see a lot, and I've experienced it myself, and I see it out there in the world, is we live in a world where you have all these people on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube talking about how easy and fast it is to get to some great level of success. And so that creates, in a way, a limiting belief that it should be easy. And my experience of growing multiple businesses and talking to hundreds and now thousands probably of business owners is that it's very rarely, there's always the the supernovas, there's always the exceptions to the rules, but most people, it takes years. It literally takes 3 to 5 years for the average business to get to a level of profitability, and in many more years beyond that, sometimes for stability. And so you just started within not even a year ago, right? And so like that person that got the 1,000 signups, what you don't know is how many years did they put their stuff out there with crickets. And so they pushed through that limiting belief that it should just happen because my stuff is good, to keep doing it long enough and fast enough and hard enough and frequently enough that they eventually got to the point where they can put something out there and get 1,000 signups. So that's something I would just share with you. Like you're less than a year in, and most businesses will not be anywhere near a level of being able to do what that woman did within a year. So you're not doing anything wrong, and nothing's wrong with you because of that. It's just that's the nature of the beast, right? You just got to keep going at it and putting yourself out there year after year after year frequently, and get over those beliefs of like the sales, like I don't want to be icky and salesy, like figure those things out. But a limiting belief can be, I think, that like it should be easy, and it's not. It's never going to be easy.
Thank you for adding that, Nathan. And in the interest of time, I'll just move on. If we have time at the end, I want to readdress, come back to that. Okay. So, I guess we kind of did some of this. I wanted us to just take a minute to think about what is the limiting belief. And part of this will tie into the release work. And so if you have a limiting belief ready, great. If you have pencil and paper, I want you to write it down. And so think about, we've kind of gone over this a little bit, right, the past few minutes, but an area of your life where you feel stuck or you're not reaching your goals. And I want you to write the first thought or belief that comes to mind about why you're not succeeding. And then next, I want you to ask yourself, where did this belief come from? And you may or may not know. It may have been something that you learned in childhood, something that you heard your parents say, something that you heard a mentor say, for example. I know when I was working on my business, money mindset thing that came up was it's hard to make money. So that was one that I know came from my childhood. And then number 3, I want you to find the emotion. Think about what is the emotion that comes up when this belief comes to mind. So do you feel fear, frustration, shame, sadness, anger? What is the emotion that comes up for you? And this is optional, but if you want to take a step forward, a step deeper and just go into like, where do you feel this emotion in your body? And so oftentimes when we have a resistance or a limiting belief, we might feel it in our chest, we might feel it in our head, in our gut, in our throat. Those are the typical areas, but there could be anywhere in your body that you're experiencing this. And then the last step is, what do you wish you believed instead? So maybe it's something like, I'm capable of learning new skills and growing my business. I'm capable of making 6 figures. I'm capable of making 7 figures, whatever it is that you wish you believed instead. And I'll just give us like 2 minutes maybe to do that so that we can move on to the tapping. Less than a minute. And it's as long as you kind of have the limiting belief, what's the emotion, what you want to feel instead, at least have those 3 components down. You can always come back to this exercise to do that later, but that'll be enough to get us through the next part of this. Okay. Does anyone want to share maybe what they put down? Do you feel comfortable sharing? Or if not, that's fine as well. I'll just kind of do an example when we get to the tapping for what it could look like. Okay. Oh, yes, please. Okay. So what did you have down for the limiting belief that you had?
Yeah, so my limiting belief is that I don't 100% believe that I can like fully make it on my own without like the support of my ex-husband.
Okay, all right. And then where's the next question? Sorry, I lost track of my own questions. Where did this belief come from? Do you know?
I think it came from childhood and seeing my parents, and they were divorced. I got divorced, feeling like a failure, that kind of thing. I could go way
Okay.
deeper in that, but yeah.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing, by the way. What is the emotion that's tied to this belief?
Fear and frustration is probably the main things.
Okay. Do you know, or do you have a sense for where you hold it in your body?
Probably my gut. I get just real like tight and constricted and anxious. Yeah, my gut.
Perfect. And what do you wish you believed instead, Tanya?
I wish that I believed that I was capable of, making it on my own without having to depend on him and, just 100% confident in myself and my abilities.
Beautiful. Perfect. Okay. Why is this important? So whatever, when you do this, especially this last part, the more empowering beliefs that you have, just write them down, because these will become your affirmations for this next step that we're going to be moving through. So what is EFT, or emotional freedom technique? Finally, right, Nathan? You're like, what is this? So essentially, this is a technique that is based in Chinese medicine, actually, because the points that we use to tap on are based in acupressure or acupuncture. And these are thought to be meridians within our body that we can use to release or allow the flow of energy. And so emotions are energy. And I don't know if I need to convince you of that, but if you walk into a room and somebody's having a bad day, you can instantly feel something. If you've ever gone like, ooh, like the energy doesn't feel good in here, you can tell without them opening their mouths that somebody's either having a good day or a bad day. It's all related to the energy that we carry in our bodies as a result of the emotions that we're holding. And so oftentimes what happens to keep us stuck in any situation is that the emotion around that issue is kind of staying in our body. So that fear, that anxiety, that stress is staying in our body. And it's, again, remember, when we go through the model of our reality, those emotions dictate our internal state, and that drives our behavior and our results. And so if we are able to change that state that we're in by changing the emotion we're holding in our body, we affect our physiology, behavior, results. Again, this is how we affect change. And so why this is so powerful and so helpful is that if we can let that it's not a matter of just like not dismissing the emotion, but it's a matter of allowing it to process through by flowing through us as opposed to just staying in us. And so EFT, has such beautiful evidence for how powerful and effective it is in treatment of depression, anxiety, PTSD. There are actual studies that show how effective this is. And so I would love to teach you how to do this today so that you can do this for yourselves whenever you're in a state of a stuck state and want to have that flow so that you can believe something differently about yourself. So these are the points that we tap on. It's the top of the head, the inner corner of the eyebrow, the outer portion of the eye, underneath the eye, under the nose, chin, collarbone, under the underarm, and then it's the wrists. So that's kind of like that. And then the karate chop is right kind of on the side of the hand right there. Okay. Anyone have any questions on that? Okay, great. So we have about 7 minutes left. We probably have a chance to do one round, and then I can give instructions for what I would recommend for the next couple of rounds. And then we can see where we are for time, but we can at least do one round. What do you think, Nathan?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, perfect. All right. So I want you to think about that exercise we just did, and I want you to think about the emotion that comes up for you when you think about your limiting belief. So in the example that you shared, thank you, Tanya, it would be fear or anxiety, either one, and you can hold both. And I want you to rate that emotion or that feeling on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 not being at all and 10 being how you would feel in the worst case. So fear, worst case, somebody, you hear a noise in the middle of the night, for example, for a woman, that would be maybe a 10. You think there's an intruder, that may be a 10. So like, where do you feel that fear or that maybe anxiety right now in your body? And I want you to write it down. Does anyone want to share at least what the number is, or put it in the chat? Because the goal is even after one round, you're going to notice an improvement. And so I would love if you feel comfortable to share where you are on that scale before we start. Perfect. 8. Awesome. Okay. Now we have something called a setup statement, which is perfect 7, which is what you will say. You can say this out loud. You can say this to yourself. Everyone's on mute, so feel free to say it out loud. And so the statement that I'm going to have you repeat after me is, even though I have this, and you will substitute your emotion. So I'm going to be saying fear. I deeply and completely love and accept myself. For some people, that statement alone is a little bit difficult to say. And so an alternative is, I choose to deeply, or I choose to completely love and accept myself. So pick whatever variation of that feels comfortable to you. And if that neither feels comfortable, you can put it in the chat and I can give you some other options. But I'm going to write the alternative here. I choose to accept myself. Okay, perfect. Oops. Okay. All right, so as we tap, we're going to be repeating this. And so I'll have you start by tapping on your karate chop right here. And take some deep breaths in and out, in through your nose if that feels good to you, and out through your mouth. And feel free to close down your eyes if that feels good to you too. And I'm probably going to do that. And so as you tap on this karate chop, I want you to just tap into that emotion, that feeling that you're feeling. All right, and we're going to start at the top of your head here. Even though I have this fear, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Inner corner of the eyebrow. Even though I have this fear, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Side of the eye. Even though I have this fear, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Underneath the eye. Even though I have this fear, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Under the nose. Even though I have this fear, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Chin. Even though I have this fear, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Collarbone. And you can do one or the other or both. I like to do both. Even though I have this fear, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And under the underarm, and you're kind of going just maybe a couple inches. So for women, it would be like bra strap level. Even though I have this fear, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And now we're going to do the wrists. Even though I have this fear, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Deep breath in and out. All right. And when you feel ready, go ahead and check in with your body. Open your eyes if you want, or keep them kind of closed, and just check in and see, where do you feel, or how has that shifted for you? Where would you rate that emotion now? Awesome. Got a 3, 5, perfect. 4, amazing. And so typically I would do at least 3 rounds of this, or I try to do 3 or until I get to 2, whichever comes first. And that is how you kind of get that emotion down and kind of out of your system. And then we do a positive. So that's kind of like the tapping out. And then we do a tapping in. And so since we don't really have time for this, unless, I don't know, Nathan, let me know. But then we would do with those affirmations, right? I asked you to say what you would like to believe instead. Now, those are going to be the affirmations that you then tap into in that 4th round, or whatever extra round after you've reached 2, in order to kind of affirm the feeling that you want to have instead, associated with those powerful positive beliefs that you want to experience. And again, similarly, you're moving that energy through you, and that helps to kind of anchor that in the body.
We do have to kind of sign off because I have to jump off to another call. I would love to keep going. I think it's really amazing how, like, with this technique, how often do people do it, or is it, and how do you kind of, I guess
Maintain it.
my question on it is like, yeah, like, well, it's working, I guess, because like you had the rating before and after, but obviously big picture thinking, right? The idea is we're resetting, our limiting beliefs or removing them. So how does this technique contribute to removing those negative beliefs or limiting beliefs, and establishing a different kind of mindset?
Really good question, Nathan. So this is how you get your body to feel safe with the empowering belief. So oftentimes we talked about that feeling safe in our new reality that we're trying to create for ourselves. And so this helps to reduce the effects of that limiting belief in our body. So removing that emotion that's being held as a result of that belief, and then reprogramming, because I think I mentioned earlier, in addition to our brains being wired for pictures, repetition is another way to also rewire how we think. And so by doing this on a repetitive basis, whenever that emotion comes up for us, we're telling our bodies, we're literally rewiring how we now think about our goals, or whatever it is we're trying to achieve that's holding us back. And that in time will change how we're behaving. And then another thing about our subconscious is we find evidence for what we believe. So if you continue to believe this new reality and then you're behaving differently, it's kind of a positive reinforcing cycle, right? Because now you're finding evidence, because now you've moved the needle forward and you're seeing that evidence. So now you're letting go of that limiting belief. It's like when you have a really tight grip, this is how we kind of release or loosen that grip in order to now hold to this more positive, empowering story. I hope that answers that.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
And then as far as like how often, really I do EFT every single day, because every morning we wake up kind of reset to who we were the person the day before. And I think of EFT as like flossing, because I wake up with all these anxieties and ideas, and it helps me to focus. The more you do it, the more effective it becomes. It's like lifting at the gym, right? It's like an exercise that you're now retraining your brain on how to kind of refocus towards what your goals are. And so there's no limit. I sometimes do it multiple times a day. It's not something that has any limited, the more you do it, the more effect it has, essentially. So there's no like, don't do it more than X number of times a day. It is moving energy. So I do tell people afterwards, drink lots of water, try to get some movement in your day so that you can allow that kind of stuck emotion to move through you. And then the last piece I'll say is that the other way that this is kind of a gentle release. For a deeper dive, generally, I do recommend working with a coach to help you kind of reframe and see things in a different light. So this may answer your question a little bit more, Nathan, in terms of like kind of releasing that limiting belief altogether. The questions that I gave you in the reflection exercise gives you a little bit of a hint of how to see things in a different way by finding, again, evidence for the opposite of what you truly believe or what you currently believe. But then working with the coach, in my experience, has been really the deeper work that I always recommend for someone who really wants to kind of shift identities and to achieve their goals.